In early October, the Russian army began its counteroffensive in the Kursk region with the goal of driving the Ukrainian armed forces out of Russian territory by the end of 2024. Incredibly, the outgunned Ukrainian brigades in Kursk are not only holding out, they managed to organize a counterattack. Forbes reports tanks from at least 3 units of the Ukrainian armed forces advanced on the southern outskirts of Daryino. Most likely, the fighters from the 21st Brigade threw one of their Leopard 2A6 tanks into the battle. They were joined by T-64 and T-72 tanks from the 17th Mechanized Brigade. One of the enemy drones attacked a Leopard 2A6. Soldiers from the 80th Brigade managed to destroy 2 enemy BMD armored vehicles at once, which could have belonged to the 83rd Airborne Brigade. Ignoring the serious losses, Putin sends assault groups, one after another, along the road through Green Way. The water barriers between Daryino and Zelenyi Shlyakh limit the enemy's maneuvering space. If the Ukrainians can hold Daryino, they can close off secondary attack routes from the attacking enemy and then direct them into the kill zone around Zelenyi Shlyakh. Daryino lies along the right flank of the Russian force, a quarter of airborne and marine regiments and brigades sustaining the main thrust of the Russian offensive in Kursk. Shrugging off serious losses, the Russians have been sending assault group after assault group along the road through Zelenyi Shlyakh, 4 miles north of Daryino. Water obstacles stretching between Daryino and Zelenyi Shlyakh limit the Russian space for maneuver. If the Ukrainians can hold Daryino, they could close off secondary assault lanes for the attacking Russians and further channel them into the kill zone around Zelenyi Shlyakh. Experts say that the main thing is not to overestimate the success of the Ukrainian armed forces in the counterattack in the Daryino area. It is possible that the Ukrainian forces advanced only a few meters and did not consolidate their new positions. However, the main advantage is that the Ukrainian armed forces are not only defending but also counterattacking. By going on the offensive, albeit briefly and on a small scale, Ukrainian forces have thrown down another challenge to Putin's army.
Ukrainian forces recently advanced in the main Ukrainian salient in Kursk Oblast amid continued fighting in the area on December 3, reports the U.S. Institute for the Study of War. Geolocated footage published on December 2 indicates that Ukrainian forces recently advanced in southern Daryino, southeast of Koronivo. Russian millbloggers claim that Russian forces advanced in Novoivanovka, southeast of Koronivo and near Malaya Lokhmya, north of Sudza. ISW has not observed confirmation of these claims, however. Russian sources claim that Ukrainian forces unsuccessfully counterattacked near Daryino, Nikolaevo-Daryino, southeast of Koronivo, Novoivanovka, and Pogrebki, northwest of Sudza. The commander of a Ukrainian unit operating in Kursk Oblast reported on December 3 that Russian forces are struggling to supply frontline units, transport armored vehicles to the frontline, and accumulate forces for large-scale attacks due to poor logistical support. Elements of the Russian 106th Airborne Division are reportedly operating in Kursk Oblast, and elements of the Chechen, Akhmet, Spetsnaz are reportedly operating in the Sudza direction.
A real drubbing of the Russian army is underway in Syria. A lot of bases and equipment have been captured, including the Pantsir S-1. Putin is constantly changing generals there, but with those who failed in Ukraine. Russian propagandists say that the defense intelligence of Ukraine was involved in Syria. Ukrainian military expert, pilot instructor and retired colonel of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Roman Svitan, said this. According to Svitan, It is possible that Ukrainian defense intelligence was involved in Syria. After all, we have mechanisms for assistance there, for example, by indicating targets. This is what they are best at. However, the question remains, what will happen next? Because there are many currents in Syria. Some are even mutually opposing, so they can also clash with each other. Syria can be a serious second front, which is currently in the world. The first is ours, so this is the second. Roman Civitan emphasized. These actions are helping us now because the Russians have to be distracted, including their aviation. Recently, planes have hardly landed there, but are trying to stop these offensive actions, the military expert added. Russia has begun withdrawing ships from the naval base in Tartus, Syria, following the rapid advance of Islamist rebels across Syria, which dictator Bashar al-Assad's army has been unable to contain. Naval News reports. According to the publication, the tanker Yelnya, which is important for maintaining Russian forces in the Mediterranean, left Tartus. Other ships could have left the base with it. In total, the Russian naval group in Syria consists of 5 ships and 1 submarine. These include 2 Admiral Gorshkov-class frigates, 1 Admiral Grigorovich-class frigate, an improved Kilo-class submarine, and 2 auxiliary vessels. There is a real possibility that the withdrawal is related to the deteriorating situation in Syria, writes naval analyst Droxford Maritime. After the withdrawal of Russian ships, the naval base in Tartus may be abandoned, and Russia will most likely send the ships to the Baltic Sea, Naval News believes. Along the way, they may stop in Algeria or Libya. At the same time, if Russia decides to take the base in Tartus, it will have to send large reinforcements there, but it will take weeks to transfer them, Naval News emphasizes. The naval base in Tartus on the Mediterranean coast of Syria is a strategic facility for Russia. The Soviet Navy was based there since 1971, but after the collapse of the country, the ships were withdrawn. Russian troops returned to Tartus in 2012 when Moscow decided to intervene in the civil war in Syria and sided with dictator Bashar al-Assad. Before the invasion of Ukraine, Russia strengthened its military presence in Tartus to counter NATO aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean. A Russian soldier contacted the Partisan movement in the Donetsk region and disclosed the location of the enemy air defense system, the Partisan movement Atesh reports. According to Ukrainian partisans, a serviceman from the Russian military group Vostok in the Donetsk region reached out to them. He provided information about the location of a field depot, the air defense system's deployment site, and his unit's headquarters. We are not revealing all the details to protect our agent. The information was promptly shared with Ukraine's defense forces for appropriate action and published with their consent, Atesh stated. Recently, Russia has intensified its offensive in the Donetsk region, aiming to reach the border of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Russian forces were also able to build a large number of bases and logistics hubs in the Donetsk region. Earlier, Ukrainian partisans infiltrated the command post of the 37th Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces, whose officers coordinate combat operations in the Donetsk region. In addition, Ukrainian partisans uncovered a large Russian ammunition depot in the Donetsk region. An agent from the ranks of the 36th Separate Motor Rifle Brigade of the Russian Federation provided us with information about the location of a new field artillery depot near the village of Berestov in Donetsk region, the message says. The partisans learned that for several days, large quantities of ammunition boxes were being delivered to the depot by KAMAZ and Ural trucks intended for further shipment to the front. Partisans are continuously monitoring the movements of occupants in the Donetsk region and conducting reconnaissance on key sites involved in supplying Russian troops. For example, the partisans previously located a Russian command post in the village of Starodubovka in the Donetsk region, situated in hangars within a wooded area. Additionally, partisans discovered another Russian command post in the village of Yevenivka, where the entrance is concealed through a barn for better camouflage. Russian invasion forces in Donetsk Oblast are reportedly using civilian vehicles to avoid Ukrainian strikes. Partisans from the Atesh movement reported sighting an agent in Russia's 132nd Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade. Morale and physical exhaustion, lack of combat readiness due to massive losses on the front are destroying the unit from within. The Atesh guerrillas commented about the situation in the brigade. Due to fears that their positions will be detected, the command has forbidden its soldiers from using military vehicles. Instead, Russians are moving between positions in civilian vehicles.